Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Deb and this is DG Reads, and today I'm here to kick off a vlog all about books about correspondence. So I came up with the idea of this particular reading vlog because I was gifted a copy of If Something Happens to Me by Alex Finlay, and I received it as an eARC on NetGalley from St. Martin's Press, and I'm really excited to get to it. I know that the main character is dealing with memory loss after a trauma. His girlfriend went missing and was never heard from again until suddenly he's out of the country and her car was found, and he starts seeing the person who's kind of been haunting his dreams, which somehow ties into this all, and it seems like it's an international thriller, and I'm really excited to get to it. But the cover for this one, which I'm showing, is an envelope, and that got me thinking about the fact that there are quite a few books that I've really enjoyed with a lot of correspondence in it, and I figured why not add a couple more to my reading for this particular idea. And the second book to come to mind was an easy one, and that was Ruthless, Vows, and this is by Rebecca Ross. It's the second book following Divine Rivals, and it concludes the duology. This is a historical fantasy, and I don't actually really know what direction this one's going to take, and I don't want to say too much about the plot of the first one, but it is set in a world at war. Our two main characters were corresponding through magic, and I think that's going to play into this as well, and I definitely look forward to finding out more. I do have this one on audiobook, which will be a good addition to the mix for this set. And then as I was pondering what else to read for this, a friend posted about The Exception to the Rule by Christina. This is part of one of the Amazon original short story collections that they do periodically, and this one is all about meet cutes, which is not my typical thing, but this one starts with a email that was meant to go to a teacher, but it went to another student instead, and the whole beginning of the book is really just correspondence, emails back and forth. And it's a short one. It's available on KU, and I think it's also part of the Audible included with that. So that will be my third book rounding this one out. So I look forward to just doing a quick vlog out of this and having a good time, and all of these books are ones that I'm excited for, and we've got some thriller, fantasy, historical, and contemporary romance all thrown in together, so it should be a good time, and I'll let you know my thoughts when I get there. I'm checking in because I'm 20% into If Something Happens to Me, and I'm not fully hooked. It hasn't quite taken off the way I think it will, but I'm very intrigued. So we're following Ryan, and when he was about to go off to college, he and his high school girlfriend were together on Lover's Lane, and somebody hit him over the head, dragged him out of the car, and when he woke up in the morning, his girlfriend was gone, the car was gone, and neither one was found. He was accused, but he had a good lawyer, and nobody could prove anything, and therefore he was let go, but the suspicion has always been over him. And then now it's 5 years later, he's on a trip in Italy, and he gets the call from his dad that Allison's car has been found, and he recognizes a man that he has faint memories of from that night, and he's getting mysterious notes at his bed at breakfast. So I don't know what's going on there. Very interested to find out. We're also following Poppy, who is the investigator in Kansas, who it was her first day, the day they found the car, and she's been put in charge of things like going through all the tips, both the good ones and the bad ones, and I'm assuming she's going to be integral to the investigation. Beyond that, we're getting a couple other POVs, but the synopsis doesn't really say anything about them, apart from the fact that there's multiple POVs, so I don't want to really give too much away, but I'm not sure how those connect in yet, and that's definitely part of the mystery and the intrigue at this point for me. So I'm having a good time. The first 20% read really quickly, and I'll give you more thoughts later. Hello! If you're wondering why I have a furry octopus in my arms, it's because I just finished my first ever live reading sprints, and I have a new timer that I'm putting out, and I used that for the sprints, and so we got an octo-pup-Kylee to participate in sprints. So that was fun. While putting on the reading sprints, I got to the halfway point in If Something Happens to Me by Alex Finlay, and I'm having a really good time with this one. I think it's the right amount of confusing a little bit because I'm still not entirely sure how everything's going to tie up at the end, but also just really engaging and fast-paced. It moves between POVs quite quickly, so that helps keep the interest up. I'm not quite sure exactly how it's going to go. I have a few theories. I'm wondering if it's going to be an issue of the characters on page have some twists coming, or if the author's trying to fool the reader in some way. I definitely have a few ideas in mind for that, but of course I'm not going to share exactly what my theories are or which of them proves true or false because I don't want to spoil anything. But I will come back with my final thoughts when we get there. I'm here to wrap up and give my final thoughts on If Something Happens to Me by Alex Finlay. And I generally had a good time with this book. It was very readable. It was one that I could put down, but kept wanting to pick back up. So that's always a good sign with a thriller. And it kept me engaged pretty much throughout the whole book. I think the author did really well at using short chapters and point of view changes to keep the action going. I think also that he did well with leaving some little cliffhangers at the end of chapters. So since we wouldn't be back with that character for a while, it kept us wanting to read and keep going and get back and get answers as to where things left off in the last chapter. I did generally find the plot to be a little bit predictable. I did see pretty much every turn coming, which is not ideal, but also I recognize the fact that I've read so many thrillers at this point that it's not unusual for me to be able to predict what's coming. And predicting what was coming didn't diminish the fact that I was still having a good time making my guesses. There were a few things that I predicted that didn't go exactly the way I thought they would. I definitely revised some of my theories as I went along, and I really think this wound up being the fun read for the type of person who wants to be able to guess things along the way. I think there were enough clues there to know what was coming or to be able to stop and think about what was coming. I think it's also fast-paced enough that if you don't want to do that, the author is giving you enough to distract you from some of the clues. So I think all of that was done well. The characters, I think the author did a good job of. There are quite a few that we get to know through the point of views, and each of the point of views kind of having some different cast of characters, and I never found myself struggling to remember who was who, which I think is a really good sign. That said, there were a few times where some of the main characters made decisions that almost didn't feel quite right for their character development. And I feel like there were some moments that were there for plot convenience versus something necessarily fitting the character. That didn't diminish, again, my enjoyment too much, but I did think that was an element. The writing was good. It was what I expected from this type of thriller novel. And this isn't going to wind up being one of my favorites from Alex Finlay, but it is one that I had a good time with. It read really quickly. The pace was good and I think pretty consistent throughout. So in the end, this one winds up between a 3.5 and a 4-star. It'll go into Goodreads as a 4-star read for me. And I'm really glad that I got a chance to pick this one up. Thank you again to Minotaur for the ebook for this one. If Something Happens to Me will be out on May 28th. I decided to pick up The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren at work today and wound up finishing it in one go. Mind you, this is a novella, so reading it all in one sitting is really not that big of an accomplishment, but it was really fun and I had a good time with it. While I'm not someone who typically goes out of the way to pick up a contemporary romance, I have enjoyed Christina Lauren in the past. So when I saw this one was really all about email correspondence, I thought it was a good one to give a try, and I'm glad I did. This is the first book in the Improbable Meet Cute series from Amazon, and there's, I think, 6 in the series. There usually are, and they are in KU, and they are included with the Audible. So I did the audiobook while I was at work today. So the premise of this one is a female high school student gets an email from a male high school student who meant for the email to go to his teacher. She very kindly writes back to him and tells him he made a mistake. They wind up corresponding just a bit, not much, but at the end wish each other a happy Valentine's Day because that happens to be the date, and that seems to be it. Until the next year, one of them reaches out to wish the other a happy Valentine's Day again, and it becomes tradition that they only speak by email this one time a year, and they have a really cute friendship and correspondence that develops from that. The majority of the book is told through these emails back and forth. Further into the book, there are a few narrative portions, but for the most part, it's just this correspondence that happens every year. And I really enjoyed the banter and getting to know the characters as they grow up. They start out in high school and then it continues for several years. So I would call this either YA or new adult. It just was a really fun time. I think it used the gimmick of the emails and the annual anniversary of those emails being Valentine's Day really well, and overall, it was a lot of fun. So I would recommend checking that out, especially if you have KU or Audible Plus and can get a free copy. So the second book I read was so short, I wound up also starting and getting halfway through Ruthless, Vows by Rebecca Ross. And this is a good time so far. I'm not feeling wowed by this book quite as much as I did with the first book. I really loved Divine Rivals, and it was a hard book to put down for me when I was reading it. So I think I had my expectations a little bit high with this one, although I have seen a lot of reviews kind of similar in the sense that people just weren't quite as enamored with this one, and I can see why. It picks up only 2 weeks after the end of the previous book, and our main characters are split up because of things that happened at the end of the first book, which of course I don't want to spoil. So there's a lot of trying to get back into the story for them, get back to each other potentially, or just to find out what happened at the end of the last book. The magical correspondence does make a return in this book, so it definitely is in keeping with the theme of the vlog, but I'll give you my final thoughts when I get to the end of this one. I've finished up Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, and I don't have a lot more to add about this one. I did enjoy it for the most part. It was an easy audiobook listen, but it was also an easy one to put down. It wasn't one that especially called me to pick it back up, and it should have taken me less time really to get through it, quite frankly. So I wound up giving this one a 3, verging on a 3.5. I thought there was still some charm to the correspondence angle in this one, and ultimately I did like the relationship in it, but I didn't necessarily feel like this added a whole lot to the overall plot of the series, and it just didn't wow me, unfortunately. But I did like the series as a whole, and this does wind up finishing a series for me, which is always something that I'm happy to do. Finishing this also finishes up this little correspondence vlog of mine. I hope you've had a good time hearing my thoughts on these books. This particular vlog was a little bit light on the Kylee content, and I apologize for that. She made a hard jump the other day and kind of injured her back leg a little bit, so she's on the mend, but taking it a little bit easy, not getting put into any costumes or anything too chaotic in terms of play at the moment. So she'll be back with more Kylee chaos in the future. But for now, I would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button below and subscribe if you're interested in more of my content. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you're planning to read any of these books, or if you've already read them, what are your thoughts on them? And if you've made it this far and don't have anything to comment, leave me an emoji related to the mail, an envelope or a box or something along those lines. But for now, that's it from me, and I'll catch you in the next one.